Now hold on to your seats because I'm about to say something blasphemous to the umpteenth degree to all Zelda fans, including myself. I hated the tutorial. I hated the tutorial in Tears of the Kingdom. Hey, what's up everybody? Thank you for clicking on this video. Please hit that like button and that subscribe button. It really helped the channel out a lot. And let's get straight to it. Hope you enjoy. Learning how to catch a Pokemon for the first time again. Hold shift to sprint, do a barrel roll, or maybe the 20-hour tutorial in the beginning of Persona 5. If playing a video game was like riding a roller coaster at your favorite amusement park, then the tutorial would be like waiting in line doing the mandatory safety training for like 30 minutes to an hour before you actually get on the ride. Keep all arms and legs inside the cart at all times. I repeat, keep all arms and legs inside the cart at all times. It's hard to make something like that amusing or even entertaining in the slightest, but it's impossible to do something like that when you take yourself too seriously. Especially when somebody's been waiting 30 minutes to an hour to download your super huge game. Your super huge, highly awaited game. Now hold on to your seats because I'm about to say something blasphemous to the umpteenth degree to all Zelda fans, including myself. I hated the tutorial. I hated the tutorial in Tears of the Kingdom. But for those of you who don't know, Tears of the Kingdom basically starts out in the sky. So you're learning how to play the game with all the new mechanics and everything in the sky. What I hated about the tutorial was the fact that you were in the sky without the paraglider. It made moving and getting around, especially with the fact that you had 3 or 4 hearts and 1 stamina wheel, it made that so tedious. Especially with the fact that every enemy in that game has the power to 1-shot you or 2-shot you if you didn't upgrade your armor, which usually comes after like 10 to 20 hours of you playing the game. And the actual tutorial is like 4 hours, 5 hours all in itself. What made it even more long and laborious is the fact that the Switch takes 5 minutes to load anything up. You enter a shrine, it needs loading. You leave a shrine, it needs loading. After a cutscene, you need loading. And I don't know if I've been super spoiled by the PS5 load times, but the load times for the Switch are extremely slow. And it's not like the old Dragon Ball Tenkaichi games where they would give you like a little mini game to play. Like, no, it was just a plain loading screen. It made me forget my objective every time I entered that thing. But don't get on me too hard because I love the game. I can't be the only one who didn't like the tutorial in Tears of the Kingdom. The game is great. The game is great. Just the tutorial, oh my gosh, that was hard. Especially moving the little blocks around to climb up the blocks and then running out of stamina. Oh my gosh. After being so strong in the last game and after being so strong in the beginning of that very game, yeah, it hurt. I loved Pokemon Arceus. This is one of my favorite Pokemon games of all time for how innovative it was and how I could complete the Pokedex all by myself. But they had to have crushed my hand with how much hand holding that they were doing in that game. I know the structure of a main series Pokemon game had changed totally, but come on, I understand some things. Some things like how to catch a Pokemon are just intuitive. Like, I know you have to throw the ball at the thing. After you teach me how to do that, you don't gotta show me 30 times. I joked about it before, but I seriously put in like 15 hours to Persona 5 and realized that I was still in the tutorial for that game. And I ain't gonna lie, I put it down after that because it's like this game is not deep enough for it to have a 20-hour tutorial. Going through the tutorial is always the most laborious task, and the fact that they had the audacity to make their tutorial 15 to 20 hours is crazy. And apparently me putting it down was some sort of mistake because apparently it was a great game, a great RPG with 100 hours of story in it. And I bet all of you gamers had some tutorial moments that you either hated or loved. And personally, I feel like the whole Pokemon Red, let me teach you how to catch a Pokemon tutorial, hate it or love it, that was super quick and to the point. It got what you needed to get done, and then you could spend the rest of your 30, 20, 30, 50, 60 hours playing the actual Pokemon game. I guess you can count the battle with Gary Oak as a tutorial, but that's an actual Pokemon battle. Like, there's actual strategy and real reward for winning that first battle with Gary Oak, which makes the tutorial not that hard to play, therefore helping Pokemon be a very replayable game. Books, movie, comics, manga, YouTube videos, the opening moments, the opening scenes are extremely important. You got a few opening minutes, seconds, or pages to convince the audience to keep watching whatever you put out there. First impressions literally mean so much, and it means a lot for the developers to get it right. Whether it's Aaron Yeager watching his mom get eaten alive, or a YouTuber starting off a gaming video with the best moments montage, we see opening acts all the time. was. But video games aren't exactly afforded that same luxury. At least not all the time, and at least it's not always a given. For better or for worse, in most video games you have to actually teach people how to play the game before even getting to the riveting story and stuff like that. Unless they're watching a cutscene in an opening scene like Gotham Knights, and we all know how Gotham Knights went for everybody. Everybody except for me, at least. A perfect example of this is horror games. Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, the one random horror Steam game that you found. They're all trying their hardest to set the mood for you to be scared. Your character walks into an old abandoned factory with all the lights off, and one is in the background flickering on and off again. There's random puddles of dark liquid of which you don't know what it is. Ominous silence as no music is playing. The setting is really dark, but your character gets a flashlight and a pistol, who is searching for his long-lost relative who was lost at the scene of this. Hold shift to sprint. Then after you get that notification, then it's like, okay, well, am I gonna be running soon or something like that? And some of the best horror games use the hold shift to sprint thing as a scare tactic to get you even scared even more, because it's like, oh, is something coming after me? Is that why you're teaching me how to sprint right now? Like, am I in immediate danger? Sometimes I wish video games were more like cars or airplanes or something, where there's universal parts that could be used for anything, like the jump button or the gas button. You know, since all controllers are basically modeled after the Xbox 360 controller with the button mappings and everything now. So the worst tutorials are the tutorials that take themselves way too seriously, and the games that really don't take themselves seriously at all is Portal. That whole game feels like a tutorial for the much bigger game, Portal 2. Minor spoilers for Portal, but at the end of the game, you do realize that you are a smaller piece in a giant cog of what world you're in. You're a small piece of a much bigger picture. The game is antagonistic to their own audience, and there's very little hand-holding into the game, and it kind of benefits from the fact that the premise of Portal is pretty simple. There's two portals. It's all in the name of the game. They kind of go the figure it out yourself way of going about things. And the tutorial in Far Cry 3 kind of goes into the same vein. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking in that tutorial, and it quite literally calls itself out for what it is. Let me give you a few quotes from the Far Cry 3 tutorial. So look around, and running is like walking, only faster.
Hey, who's on?
It's those straightforward approaches that I can really appreciate from a tutorial, especially one that doesn't take itself too seriously. Now, I know. I said that I didn't like the tutorial in Tears of the Kingdom, but that's because I love the tutorial in Breath of the Wild with the Great Plateau. Slipping in an ambiguous way to push the narrative forward while teaching people a whole new format to Zelda, a whole new open world format that nobody's ever seen, it's never been so gracious. Pokemon Legends Arceus need to take a couple pages out of that book. It needed to take a couple pages out of that book and some other books, but you know, I like what we got at the end of the day. Maybe the Tears of the Kingdom tutorial didn't work out for me because I knew the formula from Breath of the Wild so well. Nah, it was because they were holding back the paraglider. Let's face it. You had us a mile in the sky, but didn't give us a paraglider to get from place to place. The ironic part is that they didn't give us a paraglider until we hit the ground, and even that was missable. You can argue the fact that the paraglider and the climbing abilities is what makes Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and Breath of the Wild different from all of the other games. Like, how many times in a Zelda game, or any other video game for that fact, has something like the next part of the game been blocked off by a giant mountain, or maybe a giant wall or something, and you would have to complete an objective to get through the gate or get through the main? No, in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you could literally climb up it if you have enough stamina, and it's not raining. But even that has some workarounds. But back to the Breath of the Wild tutorial. The Breath of the Wild tutorial was so dynamic yet empowering in the great visual spectacle that is the Great Plateau. Yeah, I got that one finally. The Great Plateau excelled where I feel like the Sky Islands and Tears of the Kingdom kind of failed, where the Great Plateau kind of felt like a playground before you got to the greater world that was around the Great Plateau. So much so to the point that when I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom and I go back to the Great Plateau, I'm getting like a nostalgia boost from like 6 years ago. Of all games that need a tutorial, From Software's Dark Souls definitely needs a tutorial, and even if you ace a tutorial, that is not guaranteeing at all that you be adequate enough to play the game that you purchased. Souls games tutorials are laughably simple. Read something on the ground and then perform it. You're even allowed to die and still move forward in almost all of the From Software's Souls-like tutorial. You know it's not taking itself too seriously if it allows you to die and move forward, or skip the final boss at the end of the tutorial, which helps newcomers to a game that's extremely difficult and people who are replaying the game for the 30th time because they loved it so much, because you know you could just skip the parts that you don't want to do. Not only do the Souls tutorials teach game mechanics, but it also teaches the structure of the world and the level design that you're in. It teaches you about the bosses, the shortcuts, the bonfires, and like I said, at the end of the tutorial, the game features a boss that players can literally escape from, which you could say is a cruel way of giving a player a false sense of security for the game that they're about to go into. And wasn't the tutorial boss in Elden Ring just a regular enemy that was given like a super huge health bar, like he was an actual boss, and then you go out in the real world to figure out that he was just a regular dude you caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? The Dark Souls tutorials are some of the best because it just foreshadows the difficulty that the player is yet to face in their game, while teaching game mechanics and important combat abilities. Researching for this game, I found a lot of tutorials that are good at not taking themselves seriously. I didn't even get to the Star Fox do a barrel roll or the Kokiri Forest in Ocarina of Time, which I spent a lot of time in. The Kokiri Forest was a great tutorial because you didn't even realize that you were in the tutorial of the game. You were just exploring the forest. And the way this tutorial section ends is a huge story piece just gets dropped on you in the most gracious way possible. Technically, the Ocarina of Time tutorial is pretty long if we count the fact that it's the time before you get to the open world, but it's like you don't even realize that. Or maybe you like the tutorial section in The Force Unleashed because you didn't know that that was a tutorial section. You just thought you were Darth Vader with all the powers in the world, doing all the crazy stuff, throwing people, choking people, tossing people. You could just do, you were basically indestructible, which kind of added a lot to the game because you were shown how strong you could be, and the game taught you how to play it through extremism. If this is the farthest you can go, then you can work around to find out what you could do with the limited abilities that you had at the actual start of the game. But yeah, this was a really fun video to make. I look back on some tutorials that I really liked growing up and tutorials that I really like now as an adult, while also loathing the tutorials that I didn't necessarily like. And it's a shame that they usually precede the games that I love. But yeah, if you stayed this long, thank you for staying this long. If you stayed this long, check out some of my other content because it's just like this one. If you like this video, please like this video. Thank you for liking this video. It really helped the channel out a lot. You're leaving the bread show, but you don't have to leave the bread show because there's a whole lot more bread show where that is coming along. I did not say that at the end of the last video, and now I'm remembering that, but I remember it now, and that's all that matters. Spread love, give inspiration in all you do, and peace out.
Welcome to the Craig Show. Take two.
Back at it again.